Global Business Update. Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Great to have you, Michael. Good morning.
Morning. As far as Asia Pacific's concerned, relatively optimistic end to the Wall Street tech trading day, sort of launch shares particularly well there. Tokyo core inflation up 3.9%. Now, this is the highest level since 1982. Those who are keen on history will remember these sort of decades of deflation that Japan actually went through. That appears to be changing right now. But the Buy Japan message is not being bought by everybody, not for example, the Bank of America saying not quite yet. It's still, as far as everybody else is concerned, relatively weak monetary policy, which should keep the yen quite low. Thus, Buy Japan is not necessarily a message being shared by everybody. Now, everybody's been looking at China and where the tourists actually go. Well, which is the world's leading milk producer. What we're finding there is that prices have risen by 15%. Milk prices very, very high indeed, reflecting a jump in feed prices, as well as people's predilection for ice cream as well, which is apparently rising and causing the price of milk to rise. Let us therefore switch our attention to the United States, and you won't be surprised to learn that I'll be talking about the US debt ceiling discussions. Now, we were expecting no updates yesterday, today, and over the weekend, but we have got some this morning, and the talks are looking relatively positive, but the deadline of June the 1st is still unchanged. One of the highlights of yesterday, and I talked with Barson about this quite lengthily, is NVIDIA, which is actually joining, very, very close to joining the $1 trillion cap club, which includes the likes of Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Amazon. NVIDIA doing extremely well. Now, people have bought the fact that it's going to get billions of dollars of sales in 2024, and they've actually bought that. However, I would point out, I think this is quite a pivotal moment in AI, because that's where NVIDIA sees its growth coming from. And let us shift our attention from NVIDIA to OpenAI, which has been in discussion with EU commissioners, and there is a tremendous gap now, which OpenAI is now saying, between European regulation and US regulation. The future may be AI, but there's a load of regulation to step in right now. And the chief executive officer of OpenAI, Sam Altman, has been actually talking quite critically about Europe's attitude towards it. Staying with the United States, and Ford's CEO Jim Farley has been saying that one of the big competitors, as far as he's concerned, in the global electric vehicle market is not so much GM and Tesla, but more China. And he's particularly focusing on BYD, which is now producing millions of electric vehicles. And also China is ahead on battery technology as well, according to him. And this is something which he feels is going to be very important in the development of electric vehicles. We turn our attention now to Germany, which, according to headlines in the UK newspapers, for obvious reasons, has now sunk into recession. That's not quite true. It's experiencing a weak recession. This is to do with rising energy prices. This is to do with people staying at home and not shopping. But don't disregard Germany. It may not begin its growth until 2024, but it's had 2 quarters of negative growth, which in technical terms means a recession. I would suggest there's still plenty of life in Germany yet. And even though it's right down at the bottom of the G7 in terms of recession, in terms of growth, and the UK for once is above it, do not count it out. Turkey, now you'll remember the runoff to the election is being counted this weekend. It looks like Erdogan will win again. If he does, it's expected the lira will weaken quite considerably to 26 against the dollar, and 2023 will be a very, very volatile time in the stock market. Nevertheless, Nevertheless, even though he's closed social media down before the election, he's very, very popular on the street, which I find extraordinary given that inflation is 43% and food price inflation, as I understand it, is slightly higher than that. Let us stay with Europe now. This is Lufthansa taking a 41% stake in what used to be Alitalia. It's now called ITA, and it's got a lot more. The reason that they're buying this is it gives them, for ITA, gives them a southern hub and allows them to concentrate, or at least to join in what they feel is a very, very lucrative form of transatlantic travel and also domestic routes as well. Let us turn our attention now to the United Kingdom. Where the pensions industry this is Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, wants to reshape the pensions industry. What the Chancellor is actually doing is what all Chancellors do. They look to see where cash is actually resting and see if they can take advantage of it. Pension funds, pension relief funds, pension rescue funds, it's all very fragmented in this country, but the hope is to get some of that and say to people, look, it's about time you invested in the UK rather than leaving their funds doing absolutely nothing. UK immigration figures came in yesterday, as expected, over 600,000, a record. The vast majority of those a lot of them came from Hong Kong and Ukraine, but the vast majority are completely legal migrants, as you will know, a lot coming into the medical professions here. Asylum seekers only counted for 8% of that. A lot of students bringing their families to the UK as well. The UK retailer, now, AJ Bell is saying that UK retail investors are now buying bonds because the yield on bonds, because of interest rates rising, is so high. Really getting into that. And that's something which is being noticed in terms of something which doesn't concern you, but domestically in the UK, mortgages are getting more and more expensive because of a general rise in interest rates. And we haven't seen the last of those for some time, it seems, in this country. The UK Sainsbury, that's the sort of middle-class grocer, if you like. Their boss, Simon Roberts, is saying, despite what people think, they're not price gouging, they're not taking advantage of higher prices, they're actually taking the hit on their margins. This goes along with very much of what Tesco and the others are actually saying right now. However, the competition authorities intend to take a note of where prices are actually going. Food inflation running about 19% in the UK. Oil, a dollar's rise is crimping that growth in there. But remember, we've got an OPEC meeting on June the 4th, and it's not guaranteed that OPEC Plus, which is the additional countries that attach themselves to OPEC, are necessarily going for production cuts to keep the price up. And it may be there's a lot of divisions about that. That's the notice I'm getting anyway from traders, a lot of divisions on what they eventually decide to do. And gold, well, inflationary pressures continue, and it's really waiting for Wall Street. We're waiting for the Fed. Wall Street has priced in one more interest rate rise from the Fed, probably 0.25%, 25 basis points coming, but when it's going to be, maybe July. That is the global view this morning.
I'm not surprised NVIDIA is doing quite well because there's a big chip war going on around the world. And I want you to speak about the possibility, of countries now becoming superpowered because of the access to chip, countries like Taiwan. That's the first question. Second question for you this morning will be, isn't the EU hypocritical about AI? I don't think they should have any problems with tech companies and AI. Isn't it time for, founders in this industry to also set up what I call peer-reviewed AI that will peer review the hitherto information that AI grabs through machine learning from websites all over the world? So can't we have a peer-reviewed platform for AI rather than trying to demonize AI? Because you see, all the things AI is putting out there are things it learns through machine learning by input of people all over the world.
I'm not sure where you're getting hypocritical from. I think that what we're seeing is that the US view towards regulation on AI is very different from the Artificial Intelligence Act, which we're going to see from the European Union next year. I don't know whether it's hypocrisy. You may be right. What I think it's about is the fact that AI has taken people by surprise, and it's rapid adoption is something which people really can't get to terms with. And the fact of the matter is that your children and your grandchildren are going to be using AI quite extensively, not only to get quotes from Shakespeare and to have a friend and all the rest of it, but they're going to be taking, unfortunately, they're going to be taking their news from it. That's the bit that worries me. So any kind of regulation, I feel, is a good idea. People thinking about that is a good idea. I don't get hypocrisy in that. What I get is a failure. And the failure is to rein it in quite specifically.
Okay, Michael. Well, just one question for you. Suella Braverman is threatening to deport 3,000 asylum seekers every month from January 2024. Meanwhile, we're told that the UK is likely to have to become the second most populous country in Europe, given the rise in population and all that. Is that a problem? Is the UK facing an immigration crisis? Or chaos would be a better word to use. What do you think?
I think both of those words are true. I think there's a crisis, and I think it's chaos as well. We are an immigrant nation. We always have been, as you know, always attracted people from abroad. It doesn't matter about their nationalities. In fact, even though you will hear police chiefs talking about inherent racism in this country, it's very, I mean, you can find it in Iceland, you can find it everywhere you go. Doesn't matter which country in the world you actually go to. But generally speaking, we are a tolerant society, and that's why people want to come here. Now, the illegal immigrants coming over by boats are just being trafficked, and I don't think people would support that, because these people are coming and bringing nothing with them. And no country after a certain level can actually support that. What does migration to these shores actually mean? Well, it means, yes, they may be going into jobs, but the housing stock in this country is desperately short. That's what we're going to see. So there is chaos. Yes, there is a crisis. Yes, there's going to be a housing crisis. Yes, there certainly is. There's going to be strain on public finances. Yes, there is. There may be more tax take if people coming to this country take jobs. But if all they're doing is coming as students and bringing their families with them, no. At the moment, that's allowed. I mean, we can expect to see more crackdowns. No country can support, and all we've been seeing here is a rise, apparently because of people leaving Hong Kong, and apparently because of Ukraine. Who's to say there aren't more human crises in the future? Of course there are.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to Africa Business Update. The African Development Bank celebrated Africa Day on May the 25th by highlighting the importance of investing in the future of the continent, its youth particularly. It was a day dedicated to celebrating African culture and looking optimistically to a future with healthy economic growth and jobs. Arise business correspondent Rotus Odiri sent in this report from Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.
The African Development Bank at its ongoing annual meeting celebrated Africa Day by honoring the African Union, which turned 60 on May the 25th, 2023. It was on May 25th, back in 1963, that 32 heads of independent African states met in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, along with leaders from African liberation movements to craft a way forward for Africa's complete independence from imperialism, colonialism, and apartheid. The AFDB also hosted a youth dialogue under the theme Africa's Youth, Africa's Development Answer, to mark the special milestone. One of the participants was particularly happy to be wearing his native attire from Morocco.
Before I start my word, I would like to thank the African Bank Development Team, not only for the invitation, but for making us dressing in our local attire. This is my first time attending a conference with the Moroccan Djellaba, and I can tell you that I've never felt this comfy in my entire life.
Here's what AFDB President Dr. Akimomi Additional had to say about Africa's youth before the dialogue began.
If we think and we know that the young people are our best assets, then invest in our young people. As I travel around Africa, I'm asked from country to country, we have a youth empowerment program. We have a youth empowerment program, that's fine. But rarely do I have a young person walk up to me and say that I've been empowered. I don't believe that what they need is empowerment in that sense. What they need is investment. We must start investing in our young people. There'll be new financial institutions all across our continent whose job would just be to support the businesses of young people, to turn their ideas into great businesses.
The youth dialogue was very engaging, with some strong opinions expressed by the entrepreneurs, particularly on access to finance.
In my experience when starting our business, I got more support from outside of my country than I did at home. Until today, I haven't been able to access a loan from within Tanzania, but I access a loan from Rabobank in the Netherlands, and that needs to change.
We here on the panel have decided to bet on the continent, regardless of the challenges and the obstacles. It is important for international financial institutions, for example, the African Development Bank, that is inviting us here today, to bet on us, because like my brother Fahad said, and I've been privileged to share a lot of panels with Fahad, it's surprising that for over, 5 years the bank has been inviting us. We are yet to be funded by banks in our countries or even by the African Development Bank. But personally, I have received hundreds of thousands of funding from foreign investors. And tomorrow when these people sit on our boards, would you say I didn't want to work with an African financial institution, or would you say I preferred a foreign investor?
That when I first started my business, I went asking for a loan in a local bank, and among the conditions that they had put is that I should have at least 2 financial exercises. One of them is beneficial, and the second condition was that I should propose guarantees. Through those 2 conditions, and looking at many young entrepreneurs either in Morocco or in Africa, I think that the bank should take a step further in order to change their way of assessing risk.
Every country in Africa, in Europe, government always say, we cannot create jobs, especially in Africa. I'm making it easier for you. You leaders, the minister, the president. I'm creating right now for Andera Wine, I've employed a lot of young people. Rushaka Wealth, I've employed a lot of young people. So if I'm making it easier for you, the government, why can't you fund me? I'm not going to buy a luxury car with that money. I'm not going to buy a luxury house. I want I'm creating a generational wealth. Again, I want my business to be able to run in my absence. How did people, we all know iPhone, the founder, how did he start it? So if you're looking down upon me, how am I going to be a successful leader and a successful businesswoman? Let's not look down upon people. Because tomorrow I'm the one who's going to be hiring your grandchildren and your children.
I want to say 2 things here. One, I'm not sure if the CBE governor is still here, but in Egypt we have a model of finance that was a campaign done specifically for SMEs that are working with industry. And I think it's a very interesting model, because what is terrifying here, as Monique said and Fahad, and which I myself have seen, is when foreign investors come in, that's the new way to colonizing us, because it's not going to be in the land anymore. This is other people that don't belong on the continent that are being part of the business, being part of the revolution happening. And as much as we'd love the transfer of knowledge and technology, and I myself, don't get me wrong, I love the Dutch, but you're not keeping it inside, and there's no build-up of knowledge happening when it's always foreign investors coming to the rescue and no local investors actually understanding the risk and having fun with it. That's the difference. They see it as an adventure, as a ride, when the locals don't.
And the team for a wonderful work.
After the dialogue, pictures were taken and it was time to enjoy some culture. First, from musical bands from Egypt with a very enthusiastic Egyptian crowd showing their support. Then the audience was invited on stage to show off their cultural attire from each region of Africa.
You can't miss them. We are here. Up the stairs. Mr.
Thank you.
Wait, go back. Was that guy wearing a suit?
Yes.
Absolutely ravishing in your African attire on Africa Day.
Color, culture, heritage, history. The African Development Bank celebrated the African continent in style on Africa Day at its annual meetings. From Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, Rhoda Sodiri, Arise News.